So one of the things I wanted to start with today in this video is, before we get into any of the immigration stuff, is the wildfires in California. That's coming back up in the news again. And one of the most important things out of the news out of California is, I don't know if people remember or not, but there was a concert done to raise money for the victims of the fire in the Palisades. And the reason this is coming up is Donald Trump has signed an executive order to finally move along the rebuilding in California because it's taken so long. But now more information is coming out, and more people are discussing and talking about what's happened to all the money raised and why did the California fires happen in the first place? Why weren't there fire breaks being done and all that kind of stuff? So I'm going to start out with a interview with Jesse Waters about the governance and lack of accountability when it came to the wildfires. So we're going to get started with that today.
California was already shifting red before this. I don't know what this fire is going to do. And now the owner of the LA Times has some regrets.
At the LA Times, we endorse Karen Bass. I think right now in front, that's a mistake, and we admit that. And it's an interesting thing is that maybe we should think about how we elect people on the basis of, did they actually run a job? Did they actually make a payroll? Do they understand what it is? And rather than having professional politicians whose only job is really to run for office.
No one is defending California politicians. Even the New York Times says LA's been crushed under the weight of inaction. They don't need cuddles. They need a leader. Bass is in Africa. Newsom's dancing to the beat of his own drum. And Kamala's MIA. She just says, be patient. Because that's what I'd like to hear if my house burned down. You know, wait, we'll get to you eventually. It's almost like the media is begging for a man of action. I wonder who could that be? Michael Schellenberger is the founder of Public News. All right, so what are you hearing about what people are saying out there, Mike? You've done some reporting.
Well, good to be with you, Jesse. I mean, the firefighters themselves have been demoralized by what's going on. They know how to do their job, and they hadn't been allowed to do it. They should have been mobilized as early as January 3rd. They got the first warning from the National Weather Service on January 2nd. January 3rd, they got a second warning from the LA National Weather Service. Karen Bass flew to Ghana on the 3rd. The National Guard should have been called out then. They should have stationed fire engines in strategic places around Los Angeles. Jesse, there's 100 fire engines that are in the shop for repair at this moment that should have been repaired and should have been stationed around LA. They've been demoralized. Funding has been cut. They have twice as many calls per day from the fire department, half of them to put out fires by the homeless, and their staffing is down by a third. They were demoralized before this crisis. These are the people that we should be raising up and celebrating. They've just been demoralized by the terrible governance and lack of leadership at the state and local level. Yeah, they did get almost a hurricane type warning. You know, when you see the screen, 5 days out, it's in the Caribbean. Florida governors are able to pre-position the linemen, the sandbags, evacuate. You're saying they had a warning and they didn't.
And keep in mind, they also did not have any water available in that reservoir that was specifically for fires.
Didn't pre-position anything, and 100 fire trucks were in the shop.
It's incredible. And that was part of what they needed, that $17.5 million that was cut. That was going to go, because at first you didn't quite understand what did they mean. They needed that money for mechanics. They needed the mechanics to get the engines out. You can, for $500,000, you can buy a used fire truck. The whistleblower that I spoke to was very frustrated. They said that you really should be stationing the fire trucks, get them in position before there's any fire, get those planes circling overhead to drop water and fire retardant so that you put the fires out before they can spiral out of control.
Wow. I mean, the more and more you hear about this, just the sadder it gets. Well, we hope everybody just continues to battle this thing, and hopefully it gets put out soon. Mike, thank you so much. Good luck out.
So that was then. And this is a more recent video about, let me play Donald Trump in his original term in office talking about California needing to get their act together beforehand. And this had to do with clearing brush and doing their job to try to do the best they could to prevent these things from happening.
And you've seen what happened. You've talked about the forest fires. Now we're permitting and cleaning up these forests so it will reduce the threat of forest fire as well as creating jobs in these communities.
We're all to do that in California, by the way.
Yes, sir.
California's a mess. We're giving billions and billions of dollars for forest fires in California. There's no reason for those fires to be like they are. They're leaving them dirty. It's a disgraceful thing. Old trees are sitting there rotting and dry. And instead of cleaning it up, they don't touch them. They leave them. And we end up with these massive fires that we're paying hundreds of billions of dollars for to fix. And the destruction is incredible. So I think California ought to get their act together and clean up their forests and manage their forests because it's disgraceful. What's happening should never happen. I go all over the country and I meet with governors. The first thing they say is there's no reason for forest fires like that in California. So I say to the governor or whoever's going to be the governor of California, you better get your act together because California, we're just not going to continue to pay the kind of money that we're paying because of fires that should never be to the extent. They were telling me in a couple of states, I won't even mention their name, it's like a flash. Some grass will burn. It'll be over in minutes. They'll lose 2 acres, 3 acres at the most. They won't even lose that. And here we are with thousands of acres and billions of dollars every year. It's the same thing every year. And they don't want to clean up their forests because they have environmental problems in cleaning it up. It should be the opposite because you're going to lose your forests. You're losing them. But it's costing our country hundreds of billions of dollars because of incompetence in California. So the people, I'm speaking now for the people of California, they don't want to see this happen. They're getting destroyed. And it's hurting our budgets. It's hurting our country. And they just better get their act together. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, Director, well,
So there you go. It makes you wonder, is this something that was done on purpose, similar to what's going on with the immigration issue in Minnesota? You know, how can somebody be this incompetent and not clear these forest debris out to make sure that these fires didn't happen? And they didn't. But what makes things even worse is then you ended up having that terrible fire. And a bunch of Hollywood actors and singers and performers got together to raise money. Let's look at what ended up happening to the money, or trying to figure out what happened to the money that was raised during that concert.
That Representative Kevin Kiley is raised $100 million. And there was questions of where did it go, because it doesn't look like it was actually getting to the wildfire victims. Let's hop into that story right now. I want to share this with you. This is from Congress. This is the congressional report that Representative Kevin Kiley is a part of and that he commissioned. Here are some of the findings that we found out as of today. This is from January 6, 2026. It goes on to say, in January 2025, deadly wildfires devastated and wreaked havoc in the state of California. Over 400 people tragically lost their lives and over 13,000 homes were destroyed. In response to wildfires, an organization called Fire Aid held a benefit concert raising $100 million, which it promised to send directly to people affected by the wildfires.
And that's a tree. That is why Donald Trump is signing an executive order, or has signed an executive order to speed things along, because he said with that meeting with Karen Bass that I really hope that you're going to move things along. And she promised that she wouldn't. Of course they didn't. Absolutely. Of course they didn't. At the speed of Democrats. And it's not just the speed of Democrats, really what it is. It's corruption, just like what we're seeing in Minnesota. There's a lot of news coming out of Minnesota, man, that is not good. And it is just more and more stuff coming out about the corruption and everything else. So we'll get into that after this.
Wildfires. During the concert, the MC, actor Miles Teller, told viewers that, quote, all the money raised will go directly to people who need it now in long-term efforts to build it back. So now Kevin Kiley launched a congressional investigation into it, and this is an interim report from this committee that looked into it to find out where some of the money went. And, well, Some of it is appalling, and it's kind of, I guess, if you've been following California politics long enough, probably not shocking to you. So here is some of the apparent misuse of charitable donations. $100,000 of fire aid donations went to promote voter participation. The California Native Vote Project received $100,000 in grant funds from fire aid. The California Native Vote Project describes itself as the, quote, first of its kind statewide effort to engage Native American communities across dozens of counties to build political.
What does that have to do with fires? You see, all of these organizations that ended up getting this money had absolutely nothing to do with the fires. This is the problem with America now.
Power through an integrated voter engagement strategy.
Unbelievable.
Sounds like helping and going directly to the wildfire victims, right? If you're helping voter participation among Native Americans, 550,000 of fire aid donations went to groups involved in political advocacy. For example, the NAACP Pasadena, which is dedicated to fighting for basic human dignities for African Americans, received $100,000. Again, I don't know if that really counts as going directly to wildfire victims who lost everything and lost their homes. But that's where some of this fire aid money went to. An unknown amount of money from fire aid donations went towards illegal aliens. That's right. That's what Congress found, is that some of this fire aid money ended up going to illegal aliens. Fire aid prioritized and awarded grants to illegal aliens according to internal documents as of June 30th, 2025. A group known as Community Organized Relief Efforts Corps received $250,000 from fire aid. Corps' mission is to empower communities in and beyond crisis, and its vision to build a more equitable world in which underserved communities are prepared and can effectively respond to crisis from within.
These people should go to jail. Whoever dispersed this money should go to jail for what they're doing. It is absolutely unbelievable that the money that was supposed to go to the fire victims ended up going to these organizations, including one to support illegal immigrants. This is the country we live in.
And I'm just going to keep repeating this point. Every time you see one of these, ask whether or not this is going to directly benefit the victims of wildfires. $100,000 in fire aid donations were sent to podcasters. I did not receive any of that. As a podcaster, I did not get any of that money.
Neither did I.
For example, grant forms showed that $100,000 of money raised at the benefit concert went to Altadena Talks Foundation for the purpose of supporting the Tony Raines podcast and other shows. Now, you wonder, what does Tony Raines talk about that goes to directly benefit the victims of wildfires? Tony Raines is a, quote, systems administrator consultant specializing in software for searching, monitoring, and analyzing machine-generated data. She has been heavily involved in the tech industry, but found herself speaking about the California wildfires on her podcast. She applied for a fire aid grant, received funds. So I guess if you just were a podcaster and you applied for fire aid funds, you could get them. Silly us, we didn't actually apply for them. But then again, it's probably because we assumed that that money was supposed to go directly to wildfire victims and not to podcasters who just talk about California politics. In addition, fire aid provided $500,000 to a group called the Black Music Action Coalition. This organization's mission is to, quote, create a unified force of action for racial equity and justice within the music industry, and to use the power of our collective voice to improve communities and drive systematic change. Still not sure. So far, not one organization that he's read off so far has anything to do with the fire victims in California. Of all these things I've read so far, I'm still not sure of where any of this actually helps wildfire victims. Again, they kept saying in advertising, and they kept saying all of this money, $100 million, is going directly to victims of wildfires. Then it found out that about $500,000 went to the administrative costs of a whole bunch of different nonprofits. So administrative costs covers salaries, running the nonprofit, stuff like that. Again, if it's going to the nonprofits to pay for their costs of running the nonprofit, that's not going directly to the wildfire victims. Total, the committee found 6 organizations that allocated fire aid grants towards labor, salaries, and other related costs. And here's some of the breakdown. California Charter Schools of Association, $98,000. Neighborhood Legal Services of LA County got $92,000. Los Angeles Regional Food Bank, $170,000. That might be the closest thing I've seen so far, is a food bank, which actually could help provide food for those who are without a home. LA Disaster Relief Navigator, closer. Yep, we're getting a little bit closer. Community Clinic Association of LA County, to empower health centers to remain at the forefront of healthcare transformation. Okay, Healthcare transformation. Not sure. Again, directly to wildfire victims. LA Conservation Corps, not 69,000, is to create equitable opportunities for young people to build resilience in themselves, their communities, and the environment through a program of work, education, and support. So the conclusion was that this interim report from Congress, Fiery, advertised that all donations raised during its benefit concert would go directly to victims of the California wildfires. Unfortunately, this was not the case. Instead, money went towards left-leaning pet projects, illegal aliens, and administrative costs related to running nonprofit organizations.
There's a theme here with nonprofit organizations, non-governmental organizations, otherwise known as NGOs, in everything right now that is corrupt and everything that is causing our country to fall apart when it comes to illegal immigration, when it comes to what's going on in Minnesota with people who are rioting and assaulting federal agents, throwing bricks, all of the destructive behavior that you see that we all end up having to pay for, by the way. And let me just be very clear that people need to understand. Those on the left are never going to understand this, but those of you who are law-abiding citizens, care about the country, and want to do the right thing, follow the law, and want to have a safe, productive country, we all pay for the damage that's done to these buildings. We all pay for the fires. We all pay for... The left will tell you that it's the insurance company that pays for it. And then they want you to leave it at that, but then not extrapolate from that point. If all of you pay for insurance on your car, for your house, for your office, for your building, whatever it is, you all end up sharing in that cost of all the destructive behavior. But when we go all the way back to these NGOs, back from what this guy is talking about, all of these agencies, it's a way for some people in the government, and we'll get into the Minnesota thing here in a minute. California now obviously is one of them. We're starting to see a pattern of behavior where these NGOs, these non-governmental organizations, nonprofits, whatever you want to call them, they're front men. They're a way to front money, to launder money for illegal activity. And it's very, very similar to what's going on right now or what we used to have to deal with the mafia. And so you don't have the Italian mob anymore, because that was pretty much dealt with. It's sort of driven underground in New York. But now you have a different kind of organized crime, a different kind of mafia. And that's what's going on in Minnesota, and obviously what's going on in California with what was going on with the wildfires. And so now you see what's happening, and then everybody says from the left, instead of dealing with, oh yeah, okay, well no, this is what should have happened this way, but it's hyperbolic statements and vitriol, violence, and everything else, instead of actually defending anything that's happening, because it's indefensible.
Now, this is a small amount of money that they discovered went to all these different nonprofits that didn't really have anything to do with the wildfire victims. And some people will say, well, this is like less than 2% of the overall money, and there's still hundreds of millions of dollars out there, or tens of millions of dollars. I think the point is, if you're advertising to people and saying, hey, we're raising money to go directly to wildfire victims, and some of it, $1 or 1 penny, goes to something that's not related to it, that seems like you're committing a fraud.
That's
because
a fraud.
You have asked people to donate based on the presumption that it's going directly to wildfire victims. And then it went off to these nonprofits for voter participation, left-leaning nonprofits or NGOs or stuff like that. Seems like that's a fraud. And now they're still doing this investigation. They're still making their way through all of this. And while they say that they've been fully transparent, that all their money has been allocated the correct way, again, if any money is going to stuff that did not directly benefit wildfire victims or did not go directly to them, again, I think that is fraudulent, and all that money should be returned. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, make sure to like, share, subscribe, review.
So let me know what you think. Do you think that these people, chat, do you think that these people who ran these organizations and raised this money for fire victims and gave it to these nonprofits that had absolutely nothing to do with the fire, should they be brought up on charges for running a fraud? I absolutely think that they should. And until we do that, nothing's going to happen.